Hello, Swaruu. I would like to go into the subject of shadow work. You said that it was one of the most important for the people of the earth. I would like to deepen it, please. Would that be okay?
Yes, of course. Good evening, Gosia and Robert.
Thank you. First, it would be nice to understand what is the shadow work for you exactly. What do you understand by it?
I understand it to be the work that is realized when a person makes a systematic introspection into her or himself, analyzing progressively with or without help one's internal program, referring to the programming received since childhood, the traumas and the reactions already automatic in every person, origins and causes.
Okay, what are the most adequate methods to go about to deprogram all this?
As you would expect, it depends on each person. So what works on one may not work on another. It is part of the spiritual path and as such, it is individual. Having said that, there are parameters that can help people start with their own version of shadow work.
What are they?
The first is to understand what is shadow work. Then it goes on to form their own objectives. It is part of what a baby from birth will find as social barriers from the most basic point, which is to understand that there are acceptable things and unacceptable things. The acceptable things are propitiated by our family. The unacceptable ones are not. And this will depend on each family and culture. This means that in order to survive, the individual has to repress aspects of oneself that are not approved, while trying to exaggerate those that are accepted. This is a survival mechanism. What this causes is a duality or dichotomy in a person. The creation of the conscious and the unconscious. The fact that they have to separate like that is probably the first act of rejection of oneself. A person has aspects of being aware and aspects of the same person that are not aware of it. They cannot see it, hence the name shadow work, because it is not in the light of the person. Therefore, he or she cannot see those aspects of themselves that are there. As we repress what they teach us as negative, this is composed of socially negative things in general, although there are also positive aspects hidden there. For example, girls are told to keep quiet and not express their opinion. That causes them to repress themselves, become insecure. Let's say that a girl experienced that as a child. When she spoke, she was silenced. Then she will grow to be a repressed adult in that aspect, apparently insecure and with little self-value. But the moment she discovers the root of her problem, the fact that her mother treated her badly as a child in that aspect, she can suddenly feel safe and accurate, being able to express her opinion freely for the first time. Another example of this is people who constantly attack with inappropriate comments, but that are mild to other people, passive-aggressive. They are trying to release an aspect of themselves that they have repressed. They do that instead of openly sharing their opinion. And they do it in this way because of the negability they have with this strategy, since they cannot be confronted directly with the same ease as they would be if they expressed themselves openly from a point of their own power. They themselves have denied aspects of themselves to the extent that they do not understand why they react like this, and they come to suffer their own shadows. They don't understand them. because they have hidden them, because they themselves have lost parts of themselves by the survival strategy of hiding their negative aspects and exaggerating the positive from the socially accepted point of view. People end up fragmented, and they themselves have been accomplices of this, because their own value was less important than the need to be accepted by their family and community. But those aspects remain there and come to light, mostly to give problems. They have to face the problems and the reactions up front, even if it hurts, because it does hurt. To do shadow work is to shed light on the deepest aspects of our being, learn to transcend our problems and their deeper causes. Therefore, it is necessary to be able to reach the so-called spiritual enlightenment.
Marvelous, thank you. You said above that first it is important to understand what the shadow work is, and then set up our goals. Is what you said above part of this step, to create goals?
It is not the how, it is the why and what the shadow work is, to understand what it is.
And what would to form objectives be exactly?
It is to understand what it is you are personally looking for with your shadow work.
With that, you are not changing the personality of the person?
Yes, you change your personality, but it is you changing yourself.
The work with our shadow should be done purely by ourselves, or can we receive indications what our shadows might be from others? However, what they see, would not those be some of their own projections sometimes?
The others have many times, if not always, more awareness or can see our shadows more clearly than ourselves. They are our shadows. Therefore, what is obvious for an external person is not for the person who has the shadow in question. And at the same time, other person also adds their reactions and their own shadows, as you said. So the fact that they can also add their own shadow is not always reliable. It has to be someone quite conscious.
How to discern if something is part of us as part of our essence, or when it is programmed? Practical example of my life. My culture, Catholic religion, has programmed me to want to be in a monogamous relationship. But there are people with whom I have crossed paths who told me that I am like that because I was programmed. Is this my shadow? How do I know if my desire to want to have a relationship with only one person in the monogamous way is because I am that way, or if it is my shadow that I have to dissolve?
In the end, everything is programming, either during the life in course or before in another life. But everything is programming, interpretation. It is only a soup of gradients in which it is more obviously a programming, and others that are more subtle.
Okay, thanks. I am processing what you said.
You are welcome. Just think about it. Everything you interpret is the result of a program. Even the chair you have there. It is a chair because you are programmed to perceive it this way. You like chocolate because it is programming too. Everything that seems like your essence also comes from previous experiences that are nothing more than more programming. The gender you have, your sexuality, everything is programming. A person does not have a soul, has not been given a soul. The soul is something that is built on its own, with work and through time and incarnations. This is nothing but programming. It is just that something that is considered as a shadow is something that at this moment you do not want to have. A behavior that goes against the idea or concept that the person has of her or himself, the idea that she or he has of themselves as a person.
You are right. Looking at it this way, everything is programming. And freeing the mind towards the unified self then would mean to see all as programming, even what I perceive to come from my essence. Now that I see it as you presented, everything is ideas and interpretations. You are right. There is nothing else.
Yes, it is only the opposition between the things that a person sees as acceptable and according to their concept of self, and the things that they have that go against that concept of self, as attributes or characteristics that are in conflict with what they wish to be.
But who dictates what is acceptable or what is not? The society or the individual?
Both, Robert. But in the case of human society, the individual will always be the result of their interaction with society. And the attributes that a person does not want or that are in conflict with their personal perception, ego, are those that are repressed and become shadows. But those shadows will always be there because they are part of the values that make the individual. And that individual has them and rejects them because he or she is in resistance to them. This resistance is what defines what the individual wants to be. But the individual can only know what he wants to be if he knows what he does not want to be. But like it or not, there they are, and they will come to light when one least expects it, because they are faces of the same coin. It is not separable. As an example, if your mother disapproves of something in you, you will repress it so that it doesn't come out. Especially when you are small, because your survival depends on your mother's love. When a person is born, let's say that they do not have triggers, the precursors of the shadows. They are sort of clean and without programming. But as they grow, the shadows develop irremediably. Now, talking about this concept of shadows that are there, whether we like it or not, I have a terrestrial quote that I personally like a lot. Whatever you repress and hide will only manifest itself later as destiny. Carl Gustav Jung. This is where the term of shadow work comes from. It is something that Jung used and exhibited for the first time.
So, from what I see here, the shadows would not be any programming like my example above of being programmed to be monogamous by my culture and religion, but something we do not want, yes? And we do not know why. And if the programming harmonizes with what I want, it is no longer shadow, right? If I want to be monogamous, it doesn't matter if it comes from external or internal programming. All are programs, but it is my internal, my choice. Then it's not a shadow, right? But now, how do you know if it's internal or maybe it's something repressed that I'm not aware of, that feels like it's internal? Maybe I wanted to be polygamous, but my culture eliminated this desire.
If you know you are programmed to be monogamous, and that was a problem for you before, it would not be because you already know what is happening. You have already shed the light on the shadow. It is your decision if you follow what the shadow programs or whatever your mind consciousness dictates. If you do not know why you feel something that is giving you a problem, there is no explanation for a reaction from you, then it is a shadow. Better defined, a shadow is something that is not in accordance with your personal self-ego concept, something that you have resistance to.
Then it has to be something that gives problem. Okay, if not, it's not a shadow, yes? If being monogamous does not give me a problem and I like it, then programming or not, it is not a shadow. But now, if I have the resistance to polygamy, then what is my shadow there?
It would not be a shadow unless it causes some problem for you. It's just that by your programming, you prefer to be monogamous.
Okay, yes, I understand. I simply choose. There are no shadows.
A classic shadow is that of a girl who was not allowed to speak and who was told that pretty girls are seen and not heard. Later in life, she cannot express herself in school, university, or in public, and does not understand why she is afraid of that or cannot speak if they look at her. There is the shadow. Only if she now understands why she has it and that she has it, will she be able to understand why and work to eradicate the behavior caused by a shadow that prevents her from developing as she would like. It's just that at that time, as a child, that behavior was useful. That is why she was programmed to think that it is better to stay quiet, or else she gets criticized by others. But as an adult, it begins to be a problem, not being able to give presentations at the university to get her degree. She does not understand why.
Thank you. With this example, I understand well. I believed that the shadows are all types of preferences programming in general, and that it is important to free the mind from those towards the unified field, original source. I find it difficult to work on the shadow.
Yes, Robert, it is not easy. It is not easy to work to eradicate something that you do not know if it's there or not in the first place.
Is to free the mind of programming of preferences part of the shadow work?
This is complicated because we are entering here the field of trying to understand and classify what is an unwanted program and what isn't. Because since everything is a program, in the end you cannot eliminate all of it, or you would stop being yourself, with all that defines you as an individual person. What does the unified field self do, original source? It fragments itself to have the experience of being, to experience more. Look for the expansion in that way. It auto-programs more. The programming itself is not bad. It defines everything and it separates you from others. It defines you as a person. It gives you your own identity. You are already pure consciousness as you are. We must also make a distinction here between the somatically programmed, or of the body, and what is more as property of the soul. The unified self has its own identity, and it is the result of the sum of all the consciousnesses that exist. You yourself are not just an identity, but the sum of many of them. The only thing that defines a shadow, as Jung's concept, is that you have resistance to that programmed behavior. Therefore, you have repressed it, and then you have forgotten that you have repressed it. Even so, it guides your behavior in conjunction with other shadows as cause and effect. What results from this is a series of reactions and procedures that a person does in front of this or that situation in life. This causes the shadows that the person does not want to end up guiding the life of the person. That is why Jung has said that they will manifest themselves later in life as destiny. I expose his work and use it because it is a source of the information I am giving here, and as a reference there, searchable by you on earth, plus my personal interpretation. From the highest level, everything gets even more complicated, because a shadow that gives someone problems can be there desired by the higher self of the incarnated person, precisely to provoke a way of life that gives him or her a series of experiences necessary for their spiritual growth. This is mine, not Jung's.
And how do we know what is desired self-programming of the soul from the highest level?
When it does not confer or cause any resistance.
And again, resistance would be, how do you define it?
Everything you have that you feel does not define you, or that you do not want your ego identity to be related to that undesired attribute. Like not being able to speak in public, like with the girl in the example above.
But polygamy does not define me. I resist it. Then how to discern if it is resistance or simply a choice of my own?
Is it a problem for you? It would only be if you were with the Mormons who force you to be one of 7 wives. If you like it, it's not a shadow. If you have resistance to something, it is. But knowing that it is already on the way to resolution. What defines a shadow is that in the first place, you do not know that you have it. In the second place, you have resistance to that behavior.
But why make so many changes, Gosha, if you are an avatar of yourself anyway? Robert, because I feel that they are not changes in my avatar, they are changes in my overall being. They will follow me wherever I go because I am I. Your shadows will also follow you. It is important to do all this work from any avatar, I think, because you do this work on all levels of your being at once.
Most shadows remain as mind programming. I will use myself as an example. When I was a girl, I really liked being the girl as a shared consciousness with my mother, both of us being the same being. I liked being the girl because I didn't have the triggers of the mother who was bitter because her mother, my grandmother, locked her in the woods with a series of lies of being persecuted and isolating men for keeping spiritual purity or I don't know what to this date. She was angry and lonely. She was me. But I had the option of being the girl. I ran away from being the mother because being the girl, I only felt hope and fascination of everything that surrounded me. The mother had triggers and annoying shadows that I did not want as a soul. But they stayed in my mother's body. As a child, I was the same as the mother, but they were the mother's triggers. In this case, it is very clear what I mean. I know and I remember and I learned from the errors and the triggers and shadows of my mother. In a spiritual concept, a fully enlightened person is defined as one who has no shadows.
The obvious question at this point is, did the shadows of you as a mother and your ideas not follow you in some way? Because it has also been said that programmed ideas follow you after death. They are part of your soul beyond the physical.
Yes, but you see them in perspective. You learn from them. As I said above, it is the previous experiences of this life and of all the other previous incarnations that make you and define you as an individual person. I am a product of those previous experiences as you are of yours.
Do you feel that you have overcome the shadows of you as your mother?
Until I or any other person are not the unified self, we will have shadows. And I have personally overcome my mothers, even if they continue to define me.
And is it possible that some resistances that we feel could come from other incarnations then?
Yes, that's how it is.
So it becomes very difficult to identify them if you don't have the memory as here in 3D. So what would your advice be with regard to identifying our own shadows and resistances? Observe our resistances a lot, or is there anything else?
Yes, observe what you do not want from yourself or what causes you a problem, whatever it is.
To what degree does this problem have to be a problem in order to be qualified as a shadow? For example, I do not want to be very, very, very thin. In some way, it is some kind of a problem, but would it be a shadow?
No grade has been defined in Jung's work. From my personal perspective, it is only a matter of priority of what a person does not want, if something causes more resistance or displeasure than something else. And yes, at some point in your life, you have created a shadow by not wanting to be very thin. In the case of being very thin, it is probably something socially programmed as an unwanted attribute.
Now with the case of twins, it is curious because they may have to do different work from the same family and environment.
The twins, being the same person, come from the same experience programming of previous lives. In the case of the Earth, their new experiences as separate entities will define them as two people from then on. It is the creation or fragmentation of a soul and the creation of two from a firstborn. In the case of identical twins in Taygeta, there will be two bodies with a single consciousness, because with complete telepathy, what one of them lives or experiences will be part of the other, and vice versa, in terms of enriching experiences.
And what will be the application of resolving the shadows? Just be aware of them? How to release them?
First, you have to understand that there is a shadow about a particular problem. From there, look with reason and logic where it came from, looking into the past. Then, deciding what to do about it. Finally, reprogramming the mind, associating what causes resistance and shadow with something positive and not with something negative. For this, you need the constant repetition of the association you want to change.
Change it to something positive. But the important thing would be to not pretend anything in front of oneself, right? Even if we keep repeating that something is positive and positive, inside we can be repressing the programming that it is something negative even more. Is this a real possibility?
If you only focus on the negative, that is what you will get. Many authors say that the work of shadows is controversial because of the very law of attractions, since if you look for shadows, you will only get more shadows. But I do not agree, because not exposing a shadow that gives a problem only perpetuates it. You cannot always be in a state of denial, as if the problem didn't exist. Seeing and exposing the shadow to the light, understanding that it is there and its nature, is not seeing the negative. On the contrary, since it expresses an active and dynamic desire focused on personal progress. That is the focus and not the negative cause. Changing the focus to something positive is not pretending. If you pretend, then you are not changing anything, you are only acting. If you have resistance to the concept of being very thin as a bad thing that gives shame to whoever is thin, therefore this creates a shadow. If it is exposed and understood, it can be reprogrammed to realize that this person, thanks to that personal attribute, attracted his or her lifelong partner because that partner likes very thin people. Then the association thin will be something positive and not a problem.
I see. Change the associations, okay. All this is very interesting to me, Swaruu. The subject of introspection and self-examination has always interested me. Thank you. I think it's time to wrap up, no? Would you like to add anything else?
There is always more in every subject, but not with what I have told you today. At the moment, it is sufficient.
We will finish here then. Thank you, Swaruu, and until next time.
And to you, thank you for being with us.